Good morning, folks. Today we are talking about, for our office hours, subjects, subject headings, tags, things like that. Basically, another way to make your collections more findable and to organize them. I actually did a session at the CLHO conference this past Monday on basically this type of thing. This really featured prominently in it. And by the way, you guys, if you have any questions as we go, feel free to just ask. So we were basically talking about making sure your collections are findable, how to organize them for yourselves, how to kind of group things together. I'm going to kind of go from the findability part first. This is part of my, actually, I don't need the full slideshow. You guys can get the gist from this rather than break out. Kind of the findability of your stuff and looking at putting things online, how people are going to search and find things, and also how you are going to find stuff in your own institution. So this is, I'm throwing myself under the bus at Fairfield. This is what shows up on the Connecticut Digital Archive from when we initially joined the project years ago, in some of the initial stages. So when you search for Fairfield, you would get the titles on the beach. The description is literally only colorized postcard of Fairfield Beach. That's it. So that's kind of if you were going to get this, what would you think that you were going to see? And most people did not expect they would see a lovely beach filled with tons of people and there's structures and buildings and all this kind of thing. So when cataloging for searching, you want to add a lot of keywords into things. One of my projects now at Fairfield is kind of enhancing some of our former descriptions like that one to do something a little more findable as far as, view of a beach, view of Fairfield Beach, looking west, Long Island Sound is to the left. Several people stand and sit and walking on the beach, several beach umbrellas visible. In the foreground is this building with a small boardwalk. In the distance is are more buildings, possibly beach cottages. An American flag is flying on a pole. Just getting a lot of those words and key things in there. The other thing that we can do, actually, let me show you, because I did this with Nick Foster at Wilton. And here's another one that's not really, that I use as an example of our description in our catalog. I have a lovely picture of it, which is awesome. The title of it is Spice Containers, Zanzibar Cloves. That's actually good. It's very descriptive. Those keywords will pop up. But I've got, may have once been tagged and numbered, probably an A number. That's what I have for my description. That's what I found when I pulled that item. And luckily just tripped across it when I was looking in storage. Not very helpful. Red, rectangular tin with lid, maybe anything, writing that, transcribe the writing, things like that. Anything would have been more helpful than that. I'm not even sure that title was as descriptive as it was when I first was finding this. Nick had a good example from Wilton as well. He's got a teacup. Decoration, figures, flowers, fruit, birds, butterflies, handle like a half D. We both said, okay, that's good in the fact that you've got keywords in there. If you're looking for flowers, if you're looking for fruit, that may be useful, but it doesn't really give you any other context to the teacup. Like he said, you know what a teacup looks like, but you still sometimes have to get those descriptive words in there to be able to find it. And this is kind of no context to this thing. His example of something better was a chair that I think he said previously had just been like chair with seat cover or something like that. This is much more extensive. If you're doing like core cataloging, really trying to get things in quickly, you may not have the knowledge or the time to do something like this. But getting more stuff in there is good. Mentioning it's a Hepplewhite style, it's mahogany back, there's mentioning the details on it. And in his descriptions, they give a little bit more context about the family, about the chair and how it passed through the family and things like that. So, but no matter what, it's getting descriptors in there. It's getting keywords in there. So I'm going to jump over to, and hi, Stephanie, and I apologize to everybody already. There's going to be a lot of jumping around to 8 million tabs today. And not remembering where they were. Okay, so Connected Collections Collective Access Platform actually allows us to link directly to subjects from the system. What are the difference between subjects and keywords? Subjects are more of a formal thesaurus, attribute, authority record. So there's been some agreement somewhere about this is going to be the term that we all use for this thing. Very much people think of Library of Congress and subject headings for books that we probably all learned about like in middle school, like how to look at subject headings and back in the day, look at old school card files. The subject headings in books are very straightforward. And usually a book is about, one or two things, main topics. And you'll go to that, open it up and look in like the front header page of like what the topic is it about. Is it about history, -- Connecticut, -- Revolutionary War, stuff like that. And it'll give you 2 or 3 main topics. So when you change to our kinds of things that we're looking at, and this is including archives and things too, you're gonna get things that you want to catalog that have a lot more than just a couple headings, just a couple subjects that you want to clarify and talk about. And you can add in this, you can add as many as you want. We've got some main things to choose from, and I'll get into the types and things later. You can add as many as you want to be able to help you find something. And also this is looking towards going to standardizing the type too, in doing it this way and linking directly to the authority helps us standardize things. So you don't have 18 million different headings. So I looked on CTDA and I just searched beaches. So you can see there are over 66,000 topics that mention beaches in there somewhere. So we want to look at stuff that's like the main focus, that it's enough to get like a subject heading. So in CTDA, it's called topic. And you can look here and it starts off with a bunch of different, here's beaches, 150. 150 for 40 or 66,000 objects doesn't seem quite right. If you keep scrolling down, there's a lot of other stuff, tourism, commencement ceremonies, sandy, that's awesome, sailboats, cottages. Oh, wait, beaches again. So this is a different word, typed differently, just put in differently. Now there's 22. So you're already kind of splitting off. And this is because of the way that CTDA has people put records in. They don't have any direct links to any of the subject heading authorities. They recommend where to go and look at, so you can copy paste from the authority and put it right in. So in theory, it should all be the same, but their system just doesn't quite work that way. I didn't go too much farther to see if there's more, but it is kind of interesting as you go down, you can see other things that people are talking about and relating to what is showing up in this authority. I think we lost Mike, but I think he's coming back. Rowboats, storefronts, swimmers, all kinds of things to get in there to give you more choices for what you want to look for. So, but that's a good example of there being different topics. So you may not find everything you're looking for depending on how you search. I'm curious what we get with this beaches. Same results, the main focus is the beach on things. Okay, too. So when looking at the authorities and thinking about what are they, how do I use them, what's the best way of going about it, I really do think in the more subject headings about what the thing is about, but it also really works for classifying your collections too. Classification is huge in just trying to figure out how your collection's organized, what types of things you have, going from a very broad umbrella down to like very narrow topics of things. Like Mike or Nick with his chair, I would want to classify that. It's obviously furniture. If I wanted to break that down more, I want to call it, and I think it was an armchair. I want to say it's an armchair as opposed to a side chair, and kind of go from there. But at the very least, I want to know that it's furniture and that's in the collection. So this is a good way to pull all your groupings of things together. There's several schema out there. Honestly, a lot of other places have better guides than we do here. Canada has great guides. Honestly, who's doing a lot of things with it are like Australia and New Zealand are really good with guidelines and things like that. This is Canada, and they have Chin Guide to Museum Standards. It's very interesting to look through. They talk about metadata, vocabulary, cataloging rules, things like that. They have a really good description of what is classification in different types. One thing that most people, as far as museum object-y things go, know of nomenclature. It's a very standardized system that's been around for a bajillion years. We actually do not have a link to nomenclature in our system, partially because nomenclature is kind of I don't want to call it clunky, but it's a little clunky. It makes sense in the way it's organized, but it doesn't really make sense in the way people are going to search, just because of the way it's set up. It's set up in, like, I'm trying to think of a good example. It'll say like bottle. Okay, that's great. I want to know about our bottles. But then when you try to go farther down the list, you say bottle, it'll be like comma milk, bottle, comma container, bottle, comma something else. And people aren't going to search that way. It's not very intuitive language wise. If you're just browsing through something and looking and picking stuff, you probably see it, but it's just not as intuitive as some of the other ones are. Where did I have? It might have been over here. Oh, actually, I had it over here on the public portal. So if I go in and browse and I look at subjects, these are all the different kinds of subjects we have. If I look at, let me see, format is going to be more of what the type of thing is, which is a lot of where like classification would show up too, and how different things are talked about. Like hangings, textiles, you might see it, you might not. You're going to get a keyword if you say something about textile or something in the list. Types. And this is another one. Object types is more where you're going to get like classification, and where you would get in nomenclature like photographs, comma, ambrotypes, you're going to get ambrotypes here. So you can really narrow it down under that. Just looking at my list. So let me talk about what some of our authorities are that we're linked to, and give you some examples of how you use what, because we've got 6 main authorities that we're linked to. These are standardized, recognized authorities that have been around forever, that have a whole system in place for how they approve headings, how they create headings, that kind of thing. We do also have legacy nomenclature at the bottom, and calling it that, not necessarily as a link to nomenclature, although if you used it in your system and you migrated, it would show up here. But it's basically just legacy terms and terminology that you may have moved from your old system. Fairfield had a ton of old legacy nomenclature things. Some of them were fine, some of them were a little questionable, and it was a little questionable how people used them and applied them. My one pet peeve, throwing myself under the bus again, or Fairfield under the bus again, is one of the terms they used all the time was clothing dash outerwear, but they would apply it to like dress and pants and anything else that was worn as like over your undergarments. So they would have undergarments, fine, which we all know underwear, you think of it like that. But when they said outerwear, they were thinking like t-shirt, shorts. Outerwear is actually like coats, cloaks, outerwear that you're wearing over all the rest of your clothing. So this was applied to so many records in our database. It's insane. And I'm slowly but surely trying to go through and fix them. We currently do not have the legacy nomenclature as a field that shows up on the public portal, mostly because of problems like this, of people using non-standardized tags in their own systems, or some of them just being like not accurate. And it wasn't just us, like a lot of people who we see coming in the past years, it was just very localized terminology that really would not meld with an overall system of looking. So legacy nomenclature is super handy, but it's not public access. I believe it still searches on the portal, but it just doesn't show up as that, like if you get a browse. May change this in the future, who knows, but I don't see it. It's more of a localized thing. So talking about some of the things that we do have access to, they're all pretty similar, and they're used you work with them in a similar way, but they're kind of for different purposes. If you go to the manual, which I have to find my tab. Oh, I just had it. So I talk about subjects in the manual. It's not exhaustive, but I go through most of the main parts of it. Sometime I want to do like a more lengthy training on it, and I think it's on the schedule somewhere. But it's talking about subject headings as authorities. What are authorities? Talks about the different things, like, for example, works about movies, motion pictures, cinema, and films are all entered under the established subject heading motion pictures in Library of Congress. So you might say, this is talking about a movie. My colleague might say, this is talking about cinema. My other colleague might say, this is a film about. So unless you really get all of those things under like an approved authority heading, like the motion pictures, you won't be able to all pull them together. And this is talking about like on the higher levels. So one of the things about classifications that we look at is Library of Congress subject headings get really, really, really granular, which is great and awesome and useful. And we can use really granular headings, but you also want to have that broad overview. So I want to see everything about movies in your collection. Oh, it's motion pictures. Awesome. This is all the 300 records that we have on this, versus trying to search for all of those things. It's also kind of a topic of being consistent in your cataloging, like being consistent with using subject headings, using different terms. One of the things that I always use too is talking about spelling out place names, because there's so many variations and so many ways that people talk about different towns and things. If you're talking about Hartford, you can spell it out. A lot of people will also use HTFD, but they'll also use HFD or HTD. I've even seen, I think I've seen HRD, a lot. So when you're going in to search for something, you don't want to have to search for all of those terms all at once, or a million times. You want to search for one term and get everything. Same with Fairfield. It can be spelled and abbreviated 18 million different ways. So authority records provide cross-references to all these things. A search under, I forgot about this one, under Snodgrass Quintus Curtius for these years will lead users to the authorized form of Mark Twain, because it was one of the alias names he used somewhere along the line. So you'll get there in the end because it's the same term. It'll be like a search term equivalent. So this, oh, World War I's a great example as well, especially because, so when you're searching Library of Congress subject headings, sometimes you have to think outside the box a little bit. It's not always what you would intuitively think, especially if we're very much thinking focused Connecticut. You're thinking very, very local in one thing as opposed to like a worldwide subject thing. So World War I, we may be calling it WW1, may call it World War I, can't forget the Great War. The Library of Congress authority is World War, 1914 to 1918, just to really make sure that it's, you're talking about that really specific thing. See. So in our headings, we've got, let me go over to my thing from the other day. You used to have to be able to look in these big red books. Yeah, Lorian knows, she's seen this. That's where you would find your subject headings. I remember having to go through and look at those because it wasn't readily available to find subject headings online. And trying to find these things in here and guess what something may have been called was rough. One of my big examples was always gravestones, because I had done a lot of like visual cataloging when I was first volunteering at my old job, my old place. And, you know, I called something gravestones, someone else called them markers, monuments, whatever. So we needed a subject heading. So I'm madly looking up gravestones. The approved subject heading at the time was sepulchral monuments. Sepulchral monuments. I still can't say the word. I'm like, I don't know that word. I would never think that. But if I Google it, it'll come up with that and it'll have a search term equivalent so I can find it. I started using this Library of Congress authorities. This is a really simplified Library of Congress authority. And I mention it in the manual. There's a link to it. You can go to Library of Congress and it has a huge subject heading page and it's really explanatory, which is great. But if you just need to look up a term, it's a pain. And I think, so I have the link here. Because if you go, I'm trying to think, if you go Library of, yeah, you'll go like full Library of Congress and you're like, I don't really need all that. And go to the online catalog and stuff. It's a lot. This is just a straight term search. So if I'm looking up, I think they've changed it since then because I feel like the last time I looked at this had changed. So when you go to something like this, you'll see gravestones, authorized heading. That's what you want to look for. You'll also see references too. So you go to authorized heading, gravestones. Gravestones is that. This is a bunch of library speak down here, but you can also go to labeled display. And it gives you more of like a brief consensus. So this subject heading now is gravestones, thank goodness, because the other one's awful. The variants, it'll give you variants as well. Tombstones, here's my sepulchral monuments. So if you're going to look in the database to link something, now let me get to a thing. I want to make sure I do it in the fake database as opposed to doing it in mine because I always forget to change it back until like 2 weeks later when I find a note to myself. I don't know if this one has gravestones in or not, but part of the reason I had photos of graveyards, I had needlework that had gravestones in it. Just when it's kind of interesting to pull everything together. So if I go to subjects and I skip and go to Library of Congress subject headings. So when you go to these, just start typing what you want to look at and it'll give you a list of choices. Sometimes you have to go down a while. So see, they're still coming up with sepulchral monuments, which is fine because it'll get you there in the end. I wonder what happens if I put graveyard in. Cemeteries. Okay, so that's why you might be in your head automatically thinking graveyard, and you're like, oh yeah, why didn't I just think cemeteries? Library of Congress headings are always plural, but as if, like you saw, if you just start typing it, it'll come up with a list. Putting that in there too, so we'll find that. And since I'm in the sandbox, I can totally save this if we want to come back to it for anything. So that's subject headings. So think of subject headings as the subject, what the thing is about, what the main thing is. When we were initially doing like visual cataloging for photographs and things in one of the original online projects, there was a whole team of catalogers getting together and discussing this. And our cataloger, this is at Connecticut Historical, our cataloger, they were contractors for a couple of years for this project, would come back after these meetings and like want to pull their hair out because the debates and discussions got long and deep on some of these, because it was very much a library rooted in 2 or 3 headings versus we want to talk about everything that's in this thing. And one of the ways I always kind of looked at it, and the cataloger and I discussed, you want to use a heading for somebody who's going to look for something that they can see. A lot of things we had, I don't know if this will show up in, with CTCo. One of the things that were prevalent that we started working on were a bunch of photos of families in front of their houses in like the 1880s, 1890s, done by itinerant photographers who would go around and say like, I want to take a picture of you, then come back around and try to sell the picture. But you had your family, your prized belongings out on the front lawn. And a lot of the times there'd be animals, and it'd be pets, and there'd be horses and horse-drawn wagons and all kinds of things. You know, it'd be like something like this. Oh, hi, that's weird. I think the same thing's gonna happen, but we'll see. Oh, it's just, okay, I didn't go down far enough, that's my bad. So you'd see something like this, Avon Hotel, here's this gentleman out on the lawn with his dogs. Now you can mention it in keywords, that's great. Man with, looks like 2 dogs, 2 giant dogs, standing in front of a building with a sign, blah, blah, blah. But if you want to kind of go a little bit deeper into that and be able to like search for anybody that's got dogs and pictures because you want to know about all the dogs in the state, then it makes it easier. Now, for this, because of the nature of it, I would put dogs in the as a subject heading, even though they're not super prominent, but they're interesting just the way the picture is composed. And people would say like, well, I think that's a dog way in the back by the fence. I'm like, then you don't need to say it. You can say there might be a dog in the background. It's a really kind of learning as you go when you're doing stuff like that. You know, when you're dealing with a lot of visual stuff. Look at this dog. See those dogs? Pretty darn visible in the front. I would throw them in. And it was funny when I was doing this session on Monday, I did have one of the library person, like right in the second row, it was Meg that works with us closely and all this. And I'm saying the thing about like, use as many subject headings as you want. She was like, no, I'm like, yeah, you can, it's fine. It's a different way of thinking about it. Where was I? Oh, it was going into our list of stuff. Okay, so that's kind of Library of Congress. Library of Congress has a bit of everything when you go to a new search on this page, and there's kind of explanation of it down here, which is really interesting. It does subjects, name, titles, name, title, and keywords. I always just usually get a subject, and a lot of the time I'll end up with the name too. It'll come up. Give it a friend. Sam, see what happens. Sam comments. This is probably not ours because that's an authorized heading. So you always do want to look at the explanation of it to make sure it's the thing you're looking for. Label display. Satisfaction of the inheritance tax process amongst professional. Yeah, that's not our guy that we're looking for. So we can keep going back and look at the results list. Oh, here we go. Samuel Clemens, Samuel Longhorn with dates. So this one you also see it's got references. So click on the reference and now it'll show you, it'll get you to the authority record. So if you click on authority record, it'll say search under Mark Twain, these dates. And here's his authority, more library stuff. Go to the label display, it's easier to understand. And this will be your personal name heading for this person with all the other variations. I mean, it's kind of nerdy, but I actually like looking through Library of Congress stuff. It's just entertaining to see what's on here. Okay, now I'm going to get back to what else we have. So that's main Library of Congress down here, what your thing is about, what your thing represents. Now, Getty Art and Architecture Thesaurus is up here. This is a great explanation page for what Getty Art and Architecture Thesaurus is, what it's about. It's really talking about the type of object that something is. This will tell you how to search and all that, and it'll tell you about over here about AAT, about cataloging research tools, all kinds of stuff if you really want to get nerdy and look at that. So art and architecture is where I will put things in a classification. So like I said, there's nomenclature that a lot of people used. There's a lot of people to use either a different system or they've created their own. Back at Connecticut Historical, we basically created our own because everything that we were seeing between Getty and nomenclature, we had ditched nomenclature. Getty wasn't quite working, so we kind of created our own, which I think is actually really good, and they should like put it out more, I think. You're also thinking about with something like classification is the use of the object, what the thing is, what it's used for, and can something be used for more than one purpose? Because we had a lot of stuff that was really cross purposes, and that was another reason at the time that we created our own classification, because the others out there were very rigid, and that system at that point in time you could only enter one classification. You couldn't enter something under multiple. So like if you have like a woman's purse, you can think of it as a container. So it's containing stuff to carry around. And so it kind of makes it equipment, but it's also like costume related and accessories, like an accessories. I can't remember if it's Getty that has it or we made it up, but there's accessories carried that we use. So it's an accessory to your outfit that you're carrying. It gets really descriptive as far as that. So we had that classified as a couple different things. Let me see what, I wanted to think of a good term. Actually, let me go as an example. So back to the sandbox. So this one is a sampler. So it's a needlework sampler. So if I just start typing sampler, so there's a bunch of different things. There's stuff that's obviously not what you want, but there's samplers embroidery. Okay, that's what we want, is this. So let's also see what we have for needlework. All kinds of stuff for needlework. Needleworking process, sewing boxes, needle lace, embroidery, boxes, bags, canvases, things. There's also needlework visual works. So sampler is very much a visual work as well, because it was something that they would use to learn things, but you'd also hang it up in your wall to be decorative. So it's talking about samplers as a type of embroidery, but also needlework as a type of thing. And we're saving. Sometimes faster than others. Okay, so you'll also see this little more button here when you're in collective access, and you can click on that and it'll send you right to the vocabulary at the Getty and give you all the IDs and information and really, really super nerdy stuff. It's kind of like the other Library of Congress page that I'm not sending you to. It gives you all the really in-depth, like, stuff. So I'll usually go straight to this one if I can't think of a terminology thing for something. I use this a lot for costume just because I have some costume knowledge, but I'm not a costume person. I have a lot of like general knowledge. I don't have a lot of specific knowledge. But let's look for furniture. So you want to say that something's an armchair. So you can just put in any term and search. Sometimes it'll come up and be like, I don't know what you're talking about. Other times it'll come up and give you a bunch of different choices. And you may not even be aware that you don't know that there's a term for something until you go down and look at it and you go, oh, corner chair. Yeah, let me look at this. So the thing about AAT is it's very hierarchical. So it gets you that really broad overview term and then gets down into a depth thing. So when you go into it, if you're like, no, I just want to call this an armchair. I don't need to call it a corner chair because this is just how we do it in our thing. So anytime you see the little thing like this, you can click on that and it gives you more of an explanation of the thing or more of the hierarchy of the thing. So under armchairs, there's all these other terms too. So that might be something where you're like, I do want to get into really the depth of this kind of stuff. But I don't know the term. You can go down and try to find it. Grade chairs. I don't know what a Brewster or Carver chair is. I have my suspicions. I don't know. So I would just go with grade chairs. And when you click on the actual term itself, it gives you more of an explanation. Just a whole design to be the largest pieces of furniture in the house. Okay, great. Let me go back to, now I'm curious what those other things are. 17th century, after one belonged to Elder William Brewster. Yeah, I imagine it's like a Mayflower Pilgrim kind of thing. So that's where you kind of get more of a hierarchy so you can see what's there and what's available. And it kind of helps you walk through stuff. And like I said, you can always, if you're like, no, I just want to know that this is a chair, just leave it as a chair. It's all up to how you want to track it in your collection. If we're talking about costumes, this is a really great hierarchical thing. And I'm just going to jump in the middle and just pick one because there's 8 million costumes. So their hierarchy is costume clothing. Okay. So here's your main garments, which is where you're going to talk about dresses, which is what we should have classified that dress as in Fairfield's thing rather than undergarments. So main garment, you can go down. Here's your outerwear, anoraks, bomber jackets, capes, cloaks, all of that stuff. Underwear. So you've got your 3 categories of things, and then you can kind of go from there. Dresses is fantastic because there's a million different categories. So if you go dresses, 18 million different kinds. And you've got dresses by form, like what style is it? Is it a mini dress? Is it a sheath dress? Then you've got functions. Is it a bridesmaid's dress, maternity dress, wedding dress? So if you have a wedding dress, you can put it in a couple different ways. You can do it as a wedding dress. You can do it as just a dress, main garments, and have it a couple different categories. Like I want to see all of our dresses, including wedding dresses. Great. We'll just put it in as dressings. Or I just want to see our wedding dresses. We get into skirts, hula skirts, hollow skirts, kilts, maxi skirt, everything you could possibly imagine. Need garments again. Coats. Where's one of the other ones I was just looking for? Oh, I mean, this even gets to like main garments for lower body, main garments for the upper body. Blouses is really interesting as it gets into chemise, cabayas. I don't know what that is. Midi blouses, piku blouses, shirtwaists, which is actually pretty important because there's such a very particular thing of a particular time period. So that's always good to get in there. And again, this is if you don't know specifics of something, go ahead and go broad. And then maybe at a later date, like you'll have a costume expert walk into your door and be like, I want to volunteer. And you can get more specific with things. Let's see. I just had another thing. So you can also do So this is when you also get into things that you might hit more when you've got archives, like diaries and journals. It'll tell you about visual and verbal communication is the highest bit, information forms, document genres, journals, diaries. Under journals, we got books, commonplace books, diaries, house books, weather diaries. So you can split things out, or you can just go journals. I don't know where account books shows up. Account books, oh, house book, that's interesting. So that's still under that information form, document genres. Now it's under records, financial records, bookkeeping, accounts, ledgers, and all that. So that's another one where terminology can be weird for like account books and ledgers. So this one you can go straight to ledgers, account books, and that might be a little bit easier for to assign as a term to things. And it gets more specific. But again, if you just want to call it a financial record, you can do that too. And that gets into checkbooks, check stubs, estimates, credit record, all kinds of fun, exciting stuff. Okay, so back to our system. So we've got Getty for kind of the type of object in the thing. The union list of artist names is basically exactly what it is. It's artist names for things. Let me get back over to the fake database. So if you wanted to put in, you have paintings by John Trumbull. Was he Jon? Oh, give me an artist, yes. Ooh. The artist names are wacky because you're really not going to find as much as you would just under a regular name. I used to have a good one that I used to do. I can't think of what it is. Okay, probably not one that we're going to use in Connecticut, but you don't know. So you can go Degas, and there's Edgar Degas, person's French painter and sculptor, and it's really talking about the person as their profession, as their sculptor and that kind of thing, versus just as like a name. I don't think Twain shows up in artists. Oh, so okay, so you've got Mark Twain, pseudonym, person's artist, American humorist, novelist, and artist. So if you wanted to put him there, you can. Skip geographic names for a second to go down to Library of Congress name authority file. So whereas the union list of artists name is talking about them as the artist, Library of Congress name authority is just anything related to that person. I mean, honestly, you can use either one and it's fine. Name authority file, you kind of think if you have to get into Library of Congress, you have to be like super fancy name. Not necessarily true, because they'll have picked up on things that other places used as a heading on their thing. Like a lot of our people in Fairfield actually get pulled into this because we have a lot of our finding aids online and were submitted. So it's pulling from that. I don't know if she's in here or how she would be in here. Okay, so here's Mary Silliman. She's kind of prominent in a couple different towns. We have a lovely portrait of her, and she's in finding aids because we have stuff related to her. So this is Mary Fish Noyes Silliman. I'm fairly certain there was another name in there too with her date. So you can put that in there. And the movie that was about her is actually in there too. So you can save that. So if you want to pull out Mary Fish, you can, in our system, of course, you could create a entity for her, which I think we have because she's a sitter in one of the portraits. But we also, if we want to find out anything related to her, we would put her in here as a name authority person. So let me jump back up to geographic names. Geographic names is wacky. It's good to have for stuff like when you go back to collective access. Let me go to my beaches search again. Because it's good to be able to pull things together by geography and where something is. So place is where they, let me finish letting it search here. So place in there, There's a lot of generic Connecticut, stores, Connecticut. So Connecticut as a state, Connecticut as a thing. Hartford, Connecticut, Willimantic, Connecticut, Wyndham inhabited place. This is where it gets wacky with trying to like create something with a lot of the same terminology and where it goes to when you don't have a little bit more of a structure in place for that kind of thing. So, but here's all the places. We've got New London, Connecticut. One thing I was trying to make sure people thought about in the session last week is we're so Connecticut centric. Obviously, if we're putting stuff up online from our collections, it's Connecticut. So we don't have to say it. It's going to the web. It's going out until, and like CTDA is going out to the Digital Public Library of America. So people may not know what New London is. They may think it's, New London, UK. Is there a New London in UK? So we want to say Connecticut and have a specific term for that. So always go ahead and add the Connecticut in there rather than just that one word. So here's a bunch of stuff from that. So we have 43 things from New London in here, including a couple duplicates. Bathing suits, all kinds of stuff. So where's TGN? I just lost my, oh, we'll just go with this one. So the geographic names is important. It's good to have things in there. I don't know if New London shows up. It's kind of wacky. Doesn't always work the way you want. And it's really hard to go through the lists of places when it shows up with your results. Like if you search dresses in here, you're going to have a really long list, but you can figure out where it goes down to like dresses, main garments, and it shows up pretty easily. If I go in here and look for New London, I'm everywhere in the world. I'm in Ohio, Texas, Pennsylvania, New York. Oh, look, here's a New London, Connecticut. Okay, yes, we have that. Perfect. We can put that in there. Sometimes it's a little harder to find. If I look for Fairfield, I am everywhere from Barbados to Maryland, Virginia. Ohio's a big one. There's a Fairfield Beach in Ohio. Who knew? I can never find my actual Fairfield, Connecticut in this. For some reason, I don't know what the deal is because Fairfield County shows up, but not actual Fairfield. I found it somewhere along the line and I copied, there's this little reference number at the beginning. So if you have that reference number, I usually leave it in a Post-it on my computer so I can come and copy the number and paste it in and then it works fine. So I don't know why it is. I think it's an issue with Getty's geographic name listing versus our system not being able to find it. The trick to all of that is we do have our geography page. So you can go straight in and put stuff here. So if I look in Fairfield, Connecticut, it'll send me right to Fairfield. So I can put my, circle of stuff around here so people will be able to find it geographically. So, putting the geographic term in the system is good because it'll help out somewhat with like digital archive with CTDA, but we've got this as a backup for like tracking it for ourselves. Yeah, because if you go through and try to, I just had it before, you have to start out because it's a world thing. So if you go to search, it starts with the world. And then you have to go to North and Central America. If you're like browsing down, then you have to go to United States, then Connecticut, then Fairfield County. And I think, do you have Fairfield here? Oh, so this is the link number. I actually don't have it on this computer, so I'm putting this on now. So if I go to subjects here, Fairfield was a pain. If I go and copy my number, yay, Fairfield shows up. So most everything else that I've tried works. It doesn't like Southport either for some reason. I don't know why, but I have the number. I know it's a weird thing. So now I just know I have to put the number in if I'm talking about Fairfield. This is also a good place to do, let's save it, Fairfield. If you don't know the exact town and you only know a county, go ahead and put the county in, because that at least gets you to a part of the state. So if there's also, and there's your legacy nomenclature. I don't think I can think of anything that we put in there. Like if you have your old system and your old headings and stuff, you can still add them as you go, like put them in as your legacy, so you can look for stuff in your own system, which is fine. Make sure I said everything I was going to hit on my high points. Now, anybody have any questions? Or is everybody super confused and doesn't even know how to deal with this? This is probably one of the harder things to explain to interns and things. So I usually focus on just one thing. Like I have somebody doing a bunch of photographs and things, kind of cataloging them. She was doing it distance during COVID. Now she comes in and does it, and she's putting headings in. So I started out having her just like, I'm like, just focus on Getty and what the type of thing is. And then you can kind of go from there.
I found this really helpful because since I'm in the process, as you know, of like getting my first complete thing in there. I had really like going through this. I was so confused, and I'm going, how do I find what I'm looking for? And I left a lot of it blank because I'm like, I don't really know what to do with it. So this was good.
Good.
But I do have like, which probably is not a question for now, but I'll ask you later, maybe at the end, is I have an intern starting, which is going to be fun because I'm learning it. And now I got to teach an intern. So I'm wondering what the best process is to do this, like how to start her, what to have her do instead of trying to do everything.
No, it's a really good question. I will start off by saying, with you saying you're not knowing what to do with this, one of the things that's awesome about the system is there's so many fields for so many things, but you just have to come to grips with the fact you don't have to fill in every single little field. Like if you have your whole thing of all these thesaurus things, you're like, oh my God, what do I fill in? You only have one thing that you need to fill in. That's fine. Don't feel like you have to put something in every single field. So for the new intern starting, so I usually find it's really kind of comes down to what work do you need to get done and what is the person really good at? What do they lean towards work-wise? My volunteer that was is still doing the catalog for me. It's really, really detailed. So I love having her work on stuff that I need a lot of detail in some of those images and stuff in. Sometimes I have to pull her back, but that's okay. So it kind of depends on where what you need and where they have a talent in. So I would start with, I mean, I'm always going to say, hand them the manual and say, read this, but that doesn't always work well. It's all about your learning style. So, you know, if you needed to go through and Laura, you started, right, you didn't migrate, so you don't have any old records that need cleaning up or anything. So say you wanted to get all the entities attached to some of the records or entities in there, you can have them focus on that and just give them a very concise list of what you need to do. Or if you're having them work from an old card catalog or something, you just want to get those records in, just say, you know, okay, this is what you need to do. You need to create a new record. This is the number, put in the title, put in the description, and then, you know, maybe make new people, but that's going to depend on how multitasking they are and how much detail they're good at. Because you don't need them to be an expert at something just to get those records started. These records are always living, breathing, ongoing records. You can almost never say something's done because you're always going to find something new about something. if you have someone going through old account books or something, our account books could really stand to use better records these days. And it's just the nature of archives. It's not our job to usually fully describe and find everything in every single, transcribe every single little thing. We just need to point somebody like a research to that thing for them to be able to find it, for them to get all the information out. What we were finding with a couple of our more recent research projects is a couple of our account books are very under cataloged in the fact that there's a lot of freed, formerly enslaved people in Fairfield, and they're mentioned in one of these account books like ad nauseum, but we don't have that in the record. But it needs to be in the record so we can find it and so other people can find it. And I forgot where I was going with this, but just kind of, adding the information that you have, and then as things, so that account book is in the record. This is where I was going. That account book is in the system, but it just could be filled out more. Same as like that postcard that I had up there. It was in there. You could see Fairfield Beach. If you were specifically looking for Fairfield Beach, it would be there. If you were looking for like, did they use beach umbrellas in the 1880s? You wouldn't have a way of finding it, because if you search beach umbrella, nothing would come up for that postcard. So it's just kind of a matter of getting the basic record in there and then figuring out where you want to enhance stuff or do things in there. What are you leaning towards? What do you need to have done? What are you leaning towards having done at this point?
Well, it's interesting because she's someone who was with me last summer, but before we were in Connecticut Collections, but knew that we wanted to do this. So, and she's a photography student at RIT. So I actually had her photograph all the things in several rooms, the small objects, the things we could set up in light boxes. And she did that for like a week. So she now has all these photographs of like every angle of some of these objects with the, where there's damage, what the bottom looks like, what the sides look like, everything else. But obviously none of these records are in the computer yet. So I was thinking, like, could it be something as simple as pulling the, her just doing the titles of what the, doing the object title and then uploading the media?
Totally. Yeah, super, super good way to go about it, because you've got those existing media files. So that's awesome. And they're very frequently something that kind of falls by the wayside. I've still got a ton of old media files that are kicking around at Fairfield that I haven't had time to attach and get back to yet. And their records are there for the most part. It's just, I haven't attached them. So even her just putting that really base, here's the number, here's the title, and getting the item in there is super helpful. Because I mean, honestly, that's kind of along the lines of how I was having this volunteer do stuff during COVID, is we already had all these photographs of like actual photographs were in the system. And I'm like, I need to make better descriptions of them. She wants to do something. She can't come on site because COVID. I'm like, but we can get to it in the cloud. So she can sit at home and go through and like look at the image on the system and do some description. And you can almost do that in the same way. So have her do that initial really core skeletal bare bones record, and then attach the image to it. And then somewhere down the line, maybe you get next week, you get another volunteer in, or you're bored and have nothing better to do. Never happens. And you can go in and be like, oh, this is an armchair. And, there's green fabric covering on the seat, or something like that. Stuff that you don't necessarily need to be near the records or near the thing to start doing kind of descriptions and terminology and stuff like that for it. So having those images up there is super helpful, even if, the record's not that full yet. So how are you having her name the files, or did she start naming the files yet?
She didn't start naming any of the files yet.
Okay.
They're just in like, her digital file, the digital file of all of these photos of all these objects. And so we have everything still stored here since we didn't, we didn't upload anything from another system.
Right.
Everything is still in a file cabinet and folder
Mm-hmm.
of the actual paperwork of each object. So
right.
Part of it too could be teaching her how to find them in the file cabinet to find what the original record looks like.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. If as you're going through, if she tracked the object numbers as she was going, or if it's easy to look up, name those files by the object number of the thing. So if your chair is 1970.1.1, have her do that as the file name. A lot of the time you'll have to do like an underscore or a dash instead of the dot, because some computers still don't like that extra dot in file names. It's better than it was, but computers get confused with it being like .jpeg, .tiff, .word doc kind of thing. So just substitute. And if you ever have to bulk upload images or things like that, the computer's okay at understanding the difference between the dash and something else to like attach it to a record. Yeah. Sorry, just thinking about that. Seeing if there was a good fast way for you guys to do that. But I mean, you can drag and drop images all day. So like if she goes through and renames things, if you have 5 images of a chair, you can also, when she renames all of them, or even if you just see them, you can go through and drag all 5 of those images over into the media thing and upload them all at once. So you don't have to do one ad. You can do like 5 altogether and add them all at once, which is good, because that saves on a little bit of time. But yeah, if you can at all possibly name them by their object number. And if you've got those 5 things, you can do like the accession record number, the accession number, and then at the end, add like a front, back, side, whatever. My predecessor, my old museum, always added like a detail note. So she used DT, because that wasn't something we were going to use in like extra letters at the end of something. So she would have DT1, DT2, DT3 as a way to differentiate between the different records, because obviously can't do the same file name. And if you start adding -1, -2, -3, then that gets confused with an accession number. So either do, front, back, side, something like that, or add something at the end to kind of designate the difference in the images. And that'll serve you well down the line for doing other things too.
Thank you.
But that's
like I'll let you know how it's going.
yeah. Oh my gosh, please do. And I mean, if anything else comes up about it, like, don't hesitate to ask. So anybody else, any questions, comments, concerns, anything?
I had a couple of questions, but you just answered them.
Oh, good. Related to attaching a media kind of thing, or?
Well, that, but also more importantly, how we're going to approach. We've got 3 museums. We've got like 10,000 things in them, no exaggeration, and all the paperwork, all the records are paper, except for maybe the last 2 years. So for us to do the level of detail for each item, we'd all be long gone from this planet before we finish. So.
There was actually a discussion about this. There's a like museum collection something Facebook group that just popped up a couple months ago that's really useful, that a lot of people will ask questions about, like how to go about doing different things. And something was talking about paper records the other day. And one person was actually like, do you still keep your paper records? And everyone was like, yes. Oh my God, yes. But semi-related to that. So one thing that I always used to think about was, because if you are putting in every single detail about every single thing, it's going to take you forever. And nobody's got time to do that all the time. but you want to get as much data as you can. So you kind of, a good way to go about it is figure out your levels of cataloging that you want to deal with. So I had made a level system for myself that was basically the lowest level was skeletal record, basically saying it exists. So if anyone's, and I was thinking about it in terms of other people at my institution needing to find it and needing to know how much information we had about something. So the level 1 record was like, here, this exists. It has an accession number, it has a title, that might be it. Then I went up to level 2, which was, I think it was like registrar level of like, it exists, here's the information I have about who gave it to us, when they gave it to us, things like that. Here's a date for you. I think the third was, oh, I should have written this down. This is like years ago. I don't remember what they were. So it was like a little bit more information, but you'd still actually need to go to the paper file records to get all the information from it. The next level up was basically like, okay, here's all the information that I have access to in my paper file. Me as the collections manager, I don't have the knowledge to tell you about the thing and why the Hepplewhite share is super important in the constructed shares over time. So that would be like, I would leave it at a certain point of like, this is all the knowledge I have. Then the next level up would be like a curator, project cataloger level that would be able to tell you about the importance of Hepplewhite shares. We had most of our records were only like that level 3, like me saying, this is all I know. And then the top level was like the curator had signed off on the record of saying that this is as much as I can find out kind of thing. I think there was only like a handful of those at the time. And most of those were because we had done a couple cataloging grant projects and had a specific cataloger come in for those projects. So she had the knowledge or had the time to go and find the knowledge to get all the rest of the information in there. So it's kind of establish for you guys in your workflow and what you need from things, what level you need things to be at. Like Lorianne saying for the adding the pictures, that skeletal record, that'll work fine. And then maybe next year you get another intern or she wants to come back and do more in-depth work on it, then you can kind of bump that up to the next level of information. So it's all what you want, what's most important for you to be able to find at this point, if that helps.
Yep, that helps.
And Mike, we should talk sometime about ways to differentiate. Well, you can do it in location, I suppose, about which things are from which museum and stuff too. Make it easier on you guys. And so you can do it in location and say, this is in, museum A, this is in museum B.
That part we've actually set up, started to set up the structure for our 3 museums, and then the buildings in some of the museums have more than one building, the floors, the rooms, the storage units in the rooms. We understand that, and everything will get put in its place that way. And our first pass has been to put in all our donors, all the entities for our donors. And then the second pass will be to put in all of the individual sessions, just to create the lot that says we were given stuff by this person on this date. And then we're farming out to a bunch of volunteers the more detailed thing where they go in and put in all the individual items that were part of each session.
Awesome.
And that's just from the paper to the system. And then we have to find this stuff and see if it really still exists.
Oh, I'm working on a weird little card catalog at Fairfield that has really good information. It's sitting on my desk. So it's my last like 15-20 minute project of the day when I'm looking to kill time. And it's an old run of costume accession numbers that the costume ladies at the time organized by the date of the object. Not terrible, I guess, but it has nothing to do with when the object came in or anything like that. And I'm going through and just doing that very thing. And there's a bunch of stuff that it doesn't sound familiar. I've not seen it. We had a lot of costume deaccessioning. So when it comes to location, I just put location unknown at time of entry and leave it as that, because I don't know if it still exists or not. And there's a couple things that sound familiar, so they might still exist. So I'm just doing exactly that. Like, we'll find it at some point. Even if I find a record that's saying it went to auction, it'll turn up. So that sounds like a really good plan too, Mike. And because you'll have that stuff ready there when you put in something. And he just dropped out. So when you put in something, you'll have the person attached and ready to go. So one less thing to like slow you down. Hi, Stephanie. Did you enjoy the conference?
I did, yeah, it was good.
Good.
I had a quick question about how maybe you balance searchability without kind of overdoing it, or like, do you suggest us kind of going into some of the subject headings that are already being used to see kind of how we can connect each other, not just through our own institution?
Definitely.
Well?
Yeah, definitely. And that's a really good idea. To kind of see what other people are saying and seeing if you can find things that are similar. Because were you at the session that Nick and I did at the conference? Okay, I thought you might have been. That's one of those things that I go into like similar institutions for. Like I usually used to go into New York Historical Society because they have a lot of their collections online. And I would find terminology from them. I can't remember if their subject headings are online or not. Connecticut Historicals are not, because at the time we didn't think that people would search by that. And honestly, I don't think they're searchable, but they don't show up. Honestly, I don't think people search by those necessarily, but when you see them, if you're browsing, you're like,
Like you
oh
might
yeah.
click on them or something.
Yeah. So like this, if you're
Yeah.
going through and we've got, this is on the database. You know, a lot of these are one, so for whatever reason, that's just the one heading that they got. I saw just bicentennial somewhere.
We've been trying to
But
make
stuff
a
like that,
guide
it's good.
We've been trying to make like a guide for interns here
Mhm.
on how to do subject terms. So we've been including like common terms that we've been using.
Yep.
Just so, I don't know, maybe it doesn't matter if there are like 1,000 subject terms, but I think having like maybe some broad ones that we use at first, and then people could add specific ones might be good.
Oh, definitely, definitely. Because like, I don't know if this comes up in Getty or not. Because yeah, having those broad ones is really good to pull stuff together. Like case photographs is a really good example. And Stephanie, do you do our photos under archives or under museum?
Mostly, it depends.
Yeah.
The fine art photographs are Wayne.
Okay. So there's like photographs is a really good one, because even just putting something in as a photograph is really good. Then you get down to like the really nitty gritty of stuff. And one of the ones, especially that people have problems with, is the cased photographs. So it can either be, there's a few types of photographs that were put into cases. So daguerreotypes are in cases, ambrotypes are in cases. Occasionally you'll find tintypes that were put into cases. It's really difficult to tell which terms are, which ones they are, without looking at them in person and examining them. So at that higher level, if you say to somebody like, oh, this photograph is in a case, so put cased photograph. So that at least gets you on that track of like that style of photograph for that. So that broader term works really well. If you needed to at some point differentiate or had somebody come in that was like, oh, I totally want to tell you all of your daguerreotypes versus all of your ambrotypes and that kind of thing, then you can do that down the line, but you'll know where to find all those case photographs, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's really
we've been using photographs a lot, and I don't remember what else, but we've been using a few like general terms from the Getty. Yep.
Yeah. So I mean that works great. Just to say that something's a photograph. I was having a whole description of our discussion with my volunteer the other day about group photographs, because we have a lot of school photographs, like school kids and stuff, and I could have sworn they were under Getty, but I think she found it was Library of Congress, and I was like, oh yeah, that's right. Some group photograph. Now I can't remember. Oh, you search Getty or Library of Congress times that a lot. she found it and I was like, oh yeah, how did I forget about that? It wasn't group photographs. Anyway, you get the idea. Group portraits, that's what it was.
Mhm.
She has portraits group. So it might have been group portraits under Katie. But it was kind of like differentiating that you don't even need to know if it was what actual type of photography it was, but that gives you a general subject heading of like, I want to see group photos of things, stuff like that. So yeah, doing like some kind of guide for those overall, like here I'm handing you the photo collection, do put photographs for everything, because that really gets it into the classification.
Yeah. And is there a plan for in the fall or in the next year to fix the searchability of that type of object on the
Yes.
front end?
Yes. 100% yes.
Okay.
I know this is like an
I
issue
didn't want to
ongoing.
ask too much. because
No,
I know
no,
I
no.
asked
Keep
a lot of
asking. Keep
questions.
asking. No, keep asking. Make sure it doesn't fall off the radar. Because I think that's something that we're really going to address when we do the update to the portal.
Great.
Because there isn't that thing. And I did mention it to Seth the other day that I said Matitech's having a ton of issues with Madison stuff coming up at the same time, which I'm not sure why. At this point, we're not going to get into really trying to figure it out because we're literally in process of getting the, no, this is for everybody, literally getting into the process of redoing the whole thing. And as we talked about the system and how we were going to move forward last Friday, and he was like telling one of the women that's going to help on it, he's like, yeah, this is basically a teardown. We're going to have to start from scratch with all of this. So yeah, everything's
Okay.
going to be built for the ground up for it. So because that's one of my other pet peeves too, is a lot of these, like there's just one heading for it. And I know there's not one heading. I know we've used, because this is all coming from the same source. Like case photos for, I know I have more than 4 case photos. I know I've called more than 4 things case photos. So that count I think is really off too. So that's going to be one of my huge things to talk to folks about when we get it really going.
During the process, sorry, I have too many questions. During the process, will there still be this version of the website up
Yes.
during the
Yep.
search? Okay.
Yep. Yeah. The plan is this will stay up. This will stay up until we get to the point of redoing the new one, testing it, sending it out to a few people to kind of get a review. And once we're ready to pull the switch, it'll just swap. So you'll go to ctcollections.org one day and it'll look pretty and beautiful and be,
okay, that's great.
yeah. So there's not going to be they won't both be up at the same time. This will probably be archived somewhere for our own purposes. But we're not going to ever be down per se.
Okay, great.
So yeah, they'll just build a whole new fresh one and go from there and not put it up until we're ready to go. So,
great.
Yep. And I think we're going to have more once we get past this beginning part and get a plan in place. I will probably put what that plan is more in the newsletter for everybody. So you guys all know and say okay, we're going to start on this date. This is how things are going. This is your last chance to get, requests in for how you want stuff to look and all that. So. Yeah.
Very cool. Thank you.